The very first thing that catches our eye when stepping into the lands between is the massive, radiant, golden Erdtree towering above everything. Later in the game, we return to the golden capital of Leyndell, and even the ancient dragons still carry traces that their bodies were once covered in a golden sheen. Pretty quickly, it becomes clear that the color gold plays a huge role in Elden Ring. We've got the primordial gold, which represents the Crucible and merges different aspects of life together. Then there's the gold of the Golden Order, which shows up in certain incantations and is often tied to healing power. And finally, we've got Miquella's unalloyed gold, said to ward off the influence of the outer gods. There's even a golden road stretching across vast parts of the lands between. Gold in Elden Ring seems to connect, to heal, and to protect. And when you combine this symbolism of gold with the fact that parts of the game are inspired by Norse mythology, a much deeper picture emerges, one that casts the history of the Erdtree and the Crucible in an entirely new light. In Norse mythology, we find the World Tree, a representation of creation itself. At its roots lies the Well of Urd, where the three Norns tend to the tree, watering its roots with sacred essence to make it grow. And in Elden Ring, we see something strikingly similar, depictions of women pouring water onto the roots of a great tree. Even Marika, on the Erdtree's favorite talisman, is shown in the exact same pose. At the roots of the World Tree, we also find the realm of the dead, and a dragon gnawing away at its base. That immediately calls to mind Deeproot Depths, a place filled with wandering dead, the throne of Prince of Death Godwyn, and the dragon Fortisax. The second layer of the World Tree is the realm of humans, called Midgard. It's probably no coincidence that the second layer of the Erdtree carries a meaning almost identical to this. Midgard, the land in the middle, becomes the lands between, the space between divinity and death. And just like in Norse mythology, this middle layer also branches into other realms: the land of ice and mist, the land of fire, and the land of giants. Combine those and you basically get the mountaintops of the giants in the lands between. The World Tree is usually depicted in two different ways. The simpler version looks a lot like the symbol we see in Elden Ring's ancient Erdtree incantations. The more detailed version, though, is much more complex. And when I first saw it, it instantly reminded me of the design carved into the front of the Erdtree itself. It's clear the Erdtree is heavily inspired by the World Tree, known in Norse mythology as Yggdrasil. But that's just the beginning, because both Yggdrasil and the Erdtree share a third hidden layer, one I haven't talked about yet, a layer filled with secrets that cast the entire world of Elden Ring in a whole new light. The ancient Erdtree incantations are marked with a symbol that looks a lot like the Erdtree seal, embodying the shift from the old order to the new golden one. The older emblem shows the Erdtree in its primeval state, while the newer one shows the Erdtree as we know it. The key difference: the Crucible symbol depicts the Erdtree in bloom. As the blessing of the Erdtree incantation puts it, the Erdtree once flourished with abundance, yet it was only for a fleeting moment. Such is the course of all life, which means the Erdtree once bloomed in its original form. We even see those blossoms in-game as the Erdleaf flower, which tells us, said to grow from the old fallen leaves of the Erdtree, these flowers serve as the base material for a number of sorcery techniques. It gets even more interesting when you look at where they first started to grow. You'll find them in exactly 3 regions: Limgrave, the Weeping Peninsula, and Liurnia. The same swath the main stretch of the so-called Golden Road runs through. That road bears a sigil resembling the Erdtree's crest, yet it appears nowhere else in the game, so its origin and purpose are up for debate. One thing is clear though: its main route begins in the golden capital, Leyndell, kicking off right where one thing dominates your view: the Erdtree in all its glory. Put all the segments of the Golden Road together, and it's hard not to conclude it was used, much like in ancient Rome, for the Golden Order's campaigns of conquest. But more on that in another video. The Blessed Dew talisman reveals the Erdtree didn't just bloom. It once produced a sacred sap. It also names that bygone era, the Age of Plenty. Pair that with the Blessing's Boon incantation, and we learn this Erdtree sap carried healing power. Now, compare the modern Erdtree emblem with the Erdtree's primordial form, the Crucible, and with one of the depictions of Yggdrasil, and the connection between these symbols becomes hard to miss. The Crucible plays a quietly pivotal role in Elden Ring. If you read the item descriptions that mention it, it starts to look like there's more than one Crucible at work. The Spiral Tower incantation speaks of a golden Crucible. Aspects of the Crucible horns references the primordial Crucible, and the Crucible axe helm mentions the Crucible of life. Look a little closer, and a pattern begins to emerge. The Crucible of life is described as the primordial form of the Erdtree. Taken literally, this suggests that the primordial Erdtree was the Erdtree itself during the Age of Plenty, when it blossomed and produced its healing sap, symbolized here by this emblem. The primordial Crucible is called a manifestation of the Erdtree's primal, vital energies. In other words, it seems to be more like a natural force, an energy source that allows the raw power of the Crucible to be channeled into incantations. Then we have the Golden Crucible, described in the Divine Bird Feathers incantation. This is one of the Spiral Tower incantations, which ties it directly to the Hornsent and Enir Ilum. The incantation Spira offers the biggest clue. The spiral is a normalized crucible current that one day will form a column that stretches to the gods. So the Golden Crucible seems to serve as a bridge to the divine. It's what brings them closer, or even into contact, with godhood itself. That's why the incantation manifests as a golden spiral stretching up toward the heavens. And if you pair that with Hornsent architecture, always spiraling upward toward the sky, culminating at the Gate of Divinity, it's not hard to see the Golden Crucible as the Gate of Divinity itself. The Crucible Hammerhelm tells us that the Crucible Knight Devonia once left the lands between to search for the Crucible's origin. In-game, we meet him at the ancient ruins of Rao, where we also discover the incantation aspects of the Crucible, Bloom, which describes the Crucible's influence in the Shadowlands like this. In an age long past, before this land was enshrouded in shadow, the vitality of the Crucible flourished, and aspects of the Crucible thorns goes even further. Remains of this can be seen in the ancient ruins. So there's little doubt, the Crucible's origin lies here, in the ruins of Rao, most likely tied to the very divinity the Hornsent were always striving to reach, which brings us right back around to the concept of Yggdrasil once again. If we take this as a broader concept, and not as in Norse mythology where Yggdrasil is seen as a single trunk, a fascinating picture starts to emerge. The deep root depths represent the lowest of the three layers, the roots of Yggdrasil, watered to bring the Erdtree to life. It's the realm of the dead, the throne of Prince of Death Godwyn, and a literal embodiment of the idea that the Erdtree feeds on death at its base, reclaiming the very life it once created. The lands between are the Erdtree's Midgard, its middle realm, its seat of order, and the home of humanity, a place of life, fire, giants, and frost. In other words, the golden middle ground. Perfect for Marika's plan to create a world where true death doesn't exist. The only form of death is the one we see at its roots, not a real, final death. The Shadow Realm is, or rather was, the Asgard of Elden Ring, the divine center, where the Crucible, the Erdtree's original divine power, first emerged, before Marika sealed it away. There's another point that strengthens this theory. In Norse mythology, Asgard was home to two divine tribes. The first, the Vanir, represented fertility and nature. They worshipped the god of wind, something that lines up neatly with the idea that Placidusax and his god, together with the ancient capital Faramazula, formed the foundation of the Crucible's order. The second tribe were the Aesir, who stood for order and dominion. They were often depicted as one-eyed, one-armed, or wielding a hammer. Sounds more than a little familiar, doesn't it? So when we bring all these pieces together, here's the bigger picture as I see it. Both divine bloodlines were wiped out. The Numen were eradicated through the jar rituals of the Hornsent, and the Hornsent themselves were destroyed by Messmer's hand. That left Marika and her descendants as the only beings capable of ascending to godhood. The Gate of Divinity was concealed within the Shadow Realm by Marika herself, ensuring her order could remain unchallenged. From there, she only needed to eliminate the Flame of Ruin and Destined Death to finalize her plan. And that's why the DLC carries the title Shadow of the Erdtree, because it represents the dark shadow behind it all, the cruel acts that were necessary to create the seemingly perfect Erdtree and the Golden Order. And that brings us to the end of this deep dive. When you start connecting all these threads, the Crucible, the Erdtree, Yggdrasil, and Marika's hidden design, You realize just how much of Elden Ring's story lies in the shadows. The Golden Order, the Erdtree, even the so-called Divine Plan. None of it is as pure as it first appears. But that's just one interpretation. The lands between are full of mysteries, and every new discovery reshapes the way we see the world of Elden Ring. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to stick around, because the shadow of the Erdtree still has plenty more secrets waiting to be uncovered.